Welcome to DCS Mi8 Navigation Training. I'm Top Gun with the AKA War Dog Squadron, and I'm going to break this training up into 3 or 4 segments. We're going to go ahead and cover the Doppler navigation, Doppler hover, the ARK-9, and the ARK-UD. So we'll go ahead and start with Doppler navigation, and we'll probably throw the hover in there too, since they're related systems. So I'm going to switch over to the co-pilot seat here. And this is composed of a couple of different pieces in the cockpit. You've got the panel overhead here above the co-pilot. You want to have this switch be in the middle position to GC. And then you have the actual Doppler navigation panel right here, and also the drift angle. So let's find a location to go to. So I'm switching to F10, and I've already spotted a target earlier that I wanted to go to. I'm going to go to this abandoned airfield down here. It's at about 206 degrees, and it's about 5.93 nautical miles. If you want to get a distance and bearing to a location in a mission, you can always go to the line tool here and just draw a line, and you'll see up at the top it'll tell you a heading and a distance. So that's always a useful tool to use. Now bear in mind, in the location of the world that we fly in, the magnetic declination is -6. So if you're using that line tool to find a location on the map, you have to subtract off 6 degrees from the heading that it tells you in order to get the correct bearing. And also in the F10, the distance is measured in nautical miles, and we need kilometers for the Mi8, so you have to do a conversion. So if you've got a smartphone, you could use an app like ConvertPad or something like that, and that'll give you quick and easy conversions for nautical miles to kilometers and vice versa. So with a bearing of 206, I have to subtract off 6, so that means I need a flight direction of 200 degrees. And 5.93 nautical miles works out to about 10.9 kilometers. So let's go ahead and put that in the aircraft. So for the distance, it's a little counterintuitive in the fact that if you're flying to a target, you have to use the aft button. So let's put in 10.9. So it's basically, there's no decimals here, so you just have to kind of do a percentage between the two numbers. And map angle, so I need 200. Okay, now you'll notice that there's some buttons up here at the top for drift angle. If you're flying directly to a target, then you don't want to mess with this. All this is going to tell you in that case is if you're right or to the left of your desired ground track to get to the location. And it'll tell that to you in total kilometers. You'll also see your angle of drift on this drift angle gauge here. Bear in mind there is 2 modes to this, land and sea, controlled by this knob down here. Just keep it to land, and it's basically comparing the angle of your direction of your nose compared to the direction you're actually traveling on the ground. So you want to try and keep this to 0 while you're flying. However, if you want to go to an offset location, so say for example you want to go to an air base, but you actually want to go say 5 kilometers off to the east or to the right of it, you can actually then put that distance into the drift angle, right or left, and that way you can actually fly to that offset location instead of directly at the target. So for example, if you're in blue flag and you want to fly to a particular position where you want to wait and hold with a chopper before you fly in to drop off troops, that kind of thing. Another trick you can do with this is you can actually leave all of this set to 0, and if you just want to get a simple distance from where you took off, just leave this all to 0, enable the system, and then take off and fly. And as you fly along, your distance will increase, and it'll give you an accurate distance of how far you've flown since your takeoff point. So again, another example is like if you're in blue flag and you want to drop off a air defense unit, but it's not allowed to be dropped off within, say, 6 kilometers of your FARP or something like that. This is a handy way of telling if you've flown far enough away in order to drop it off. So in any case, once you've got the parameters set, just turn the system on. And now we just need to fly the needles. Also, if you want to just have a helpful indicator, you can change the course arrow on your HSI to fly your direction. The co-pilot's HSI does not have any interconnectivity with the pilot's, so you'll see that his is set separately. So if you're going to be flipping back and forth between the two seats, you'll want to change each of these individually. So let's see if we can navigate straight to that target. Alright, so I want 200 degrees. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and fly a little bit off to the right so we can see some of the drift angle. That way we can introduce some air and we can see what it looks like. And you can see the drift angle is already starting to spiral up a little bit. And our drift angle is pointing off to the left. And the gauge itself is reading we're to the right of our desired track. So let's go ahead and swing back left. We'll go a little bit past 200 degrees so we can get back onto our track. And you see the distance is cycling down. We're down to about 7.5 kilometers. And our drift air has gone back down to 0. So let's get back onto course, 200 degrees. And bear in mind, this is not a GPS. This is not a ultra precision instrument. So you want to fly as easy as you can. No hard maneuvering. Hard maneuvering is going to introduce errors into the system. It'll accumulate errors over time, anyways. But maneuvering hard will just make that faster. So we're back at pretty much 0 drift angle. We're probably a little off to the right. So on our HSI, we're going 200 degrees. We're pretty much 0 degrees drift angle. On the navigation panel, we're a little drifting on the drift gauge, but as you can see, we're heading straight there. So that's the Doppler navigation. So let's switch over to Doppler hover. I'll go ahead and land, and then we'll go over the Doppler hover gauge, and then I'll try and do a hover over the X here once we've gone over the details of it. Also, a little note for the Doppler navigation is if you get a warning in your cockpit that your generators have kicked off, that may very well basically shut off your Doppler navigation. It'll lose whatever it's been inputted in memory, so you'll probably have to turn the system on, put in new navigational information if necessary, and then turn it back on. Alright, so once we're down here, alright, so the Doppler navigation, or the Doppler hover, is this gauge right here, and only the pilot has it. The co-pilot does not. It's comprised of a couple of pieces. You've got the drift tapes, the on-off, and the vertical velocity. So the on-off is going to appear when you're traveling too fast in any one of the directions, or you're too low, or you're maneuvering too hard. So if you're in like a 40-degree bank or something like that, you'll probably see this turn on. If you're traveling more than 40 kph forward, but you're basically off the scale of the gauge, it'll most likely turn on. And if you're just above touchdown, it'll also turn on. But what will happen here is when you're drifting in a particular direction, you'll see a white tape grow in that direction. So if I'm drifting to the left and back, you'll see a tape growing in that direction and that direction. The other piece is the vertical velocity. This basically tells you in meters per second how fast you're going up and down. Basically same function as the vertical velocity gauge, but bear in mind, this is a lot more responsive, a lot faster to respond than the vertical velocity gauge. So if you want to avoid vortex ring state, you're going to want to pay attention to this and not this, because if you wait for this to get to a vortex ring state speed, so if you get down to like 5 or less on this gauge, it may be too late. This will tell you a lot faster what your accurate sync rate is. So let's go ahead and take off real quick, and I'll try and just drift around a little bit so you can see what this looks like. So I'm going to drift back a little bit, and you can see the tape growing. So now let's drift a little bit to the right. But really that's all it is. So all you have to do in order to hover over a fixed point is just go ahead and fly to basically negate those tapes. So I need to go to the right and forward a little. And also the vertical velocity on the left side, make sure that's zeroed out as well. So once you have all the tapes gone and the vertical velocity is at 0, you are hovering over a fixed point. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and, for the ease of the lesson here, I'm going to go ahead and land this and spawn a new helicopter. And we'll move on to the next piece. Okay, welcome back. So we're back at the airport we originated from. So the next part that we're going to go over is the ARK-9. And that is going to be this panel right up here. And this is basically your direction finding gear. So if you've got a ADF beacon somewhere in the world that you needed to home into, or you can home into marker beacons at airports, things like that. So I know from designing this mission that there's a airport marker beacon off to the west somewhere at 490. You can actually dial in 2 separate frequencies at once on this panel. You can only navigate to one at a time, but you could actually make like a pseudo flight plan, if you will, 2 different ADF stations by plugging in both of the required ones and then switching from one radio to the other. Once you've reached the first one, move on to the next one. And how you do that is this switch right here. So it's simple: left for left, right position for right. So we'll go ahead and do the left part of the gauge here. So let me switch to the technician's seat so we can get a better angle. So I need to dial into 490. So you got to dial down here and you got to dial in the middle. And if it's not an even number, so let's say it was 493 or something like that, you have to tune it with this knob right here. And it goes left and right from 0 to -10, 0 to 20. And you'll also have a signal meter here that will tell you when you've got a good lock on the system. Obviously, you'll also have to put power to the system, so we need to turn on with this knob right here by doing one click over to the right towards comp. So as you can see, watch this needle here as we tune it. So we're going up to the 0 to make it an even 490, and it jumped all the way to the right. And if you want, you can even listen to it. Let's switch back over to the co-pilot station. You can actually dial in the ARK-9 radio so you can see what it's broadcasting. And there you go. We got Morse code. Let's dial it off so we're not in tune. And now you hear stop. And then we'll get back to the 0. Alright, so let's turn that off so we don't listen to Morse code all day. Alright, so now that we've got the channel dialed in and we see that we've got a good signal, where do we go? Alright, so you look at your HSI and you're following the white needle, and that will drive the HSI on both seats, so pilot and co-pilot. Now bear in mind, this needle will jump around from time to time, so it's usually a wise idea to use your course set arrow to overlay this, so that when the needle kind of goes berserk for a couple of seconds, you can still maintain the appropriate course. So let's go ahead and fly to that. And with this instrument, there's no distance indication whatsoever. So you're just going to have to fly towards the target until you see that needle suddenly point behind you. And that point, you've overflown the target. And as you can see right there, the needle's going a little wonky, but then it settles back onto course. It'll do that less and less as you get closer to your intended target. But just bear in mind, it'll do that from time to time regardless. We're going to fly right over the marker beacon station. And there goes the needle. And that's really all there is to it. So it's just direction finding. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and land, get another chopper real quick, and we will go over ARK-UD. Okay, welcome back. Alright, so now we're going to go over ARK-UD. So what is that? That is mainly for this purpose, for this sim, it's search and rescue. So you've got, let's say, a vehicle that's broken down, you need to fly to it to fly some repair parts to it. Or there's a pilot who's been shot down and he's broadcasting on one of the ARK-UD channels for extraction, things like that. Those will be the most common things that you'll run into here. So the ARK-UD is actually this panel right here, and there's only 6 channels, and they have to be done in the mission editor through scripting and whatnot. So this will be done by your mission creator. So all you're doing is basically tuning to the correct channel and then homing in on it. So first, we want to put power to the system, which is this one right here, and we'll go with narrow. And the volume button is right here. We'll go over that in a minute. So the channel button, or rotary really, is right here. So let's go look at channel 6, and you'll see activity lights up here when you're actually receiving a good signal. So nothing on 6, nothing on 5, nothing on 4, nothing on 3, nothing on 2. And there's something on channel 1. Alright, so now in order to home in on this, you have to go to the pilot seat, and you actually have to flip this switch right here. This enables the ARK-UD navigation, and it will work at that point pretty similar to the ARK-9. Your HSI instrument will be pointing with the white needle, and just like the ARK-9, it will occasionally bounce around, so you will want to put the course arrow over on top of it so that you can stay on course when it goes wonky. And I believe, if I remember right, yes, the ARK-UD is only driving the pilot's HSI, so you have to be in the pilot's seat. And again, just like the ARK-9, you can actually listen to it. So if there's a pilot broadcasting information, you can actually tune into it by the radio panel. And we've got some Morse code. And on this one, you can actually turn the volume down by this rotary right here. But let's go ahead and turn that back off. And let's navigate out there and see what the target is. And just like the ARK-9, there's also no distance indicator in regards to where the signal is, so you're just going to have to fly the needle until you bypass the target, and then it'll flip around and point behind you. But these are the main systems that you're going to be using for navigation in the Mi8. For other helicopters in this sim, a good example is the KA-50 and the Gazelle SA-342. They're more modern helicopters with with good flight computers, and you can actually plug in specific latitude, longitude coordinates and fly directly to any point on Earth with those very accurately. Satellite-based navigation, so you don't have to worry about drift or anything like that. But obviously with the Mi8, this is an older bird. It's not as complex. It doesn't have those systems. So the Doppler navigation, the ARK-9 are going to be your primary means of getting from point A to point B. And the ARK-UD, I'm not sure. I think right now anyways, I think the Mi8 is possibly the only helicopter that has homing capabilities like that. I don't know what the limitations are in the scripting, but you might be able to script something to get the same kind of functionality with ADF gear on the UH-1, probably the Gazelle as well. But the ARK-UD, I don't think that system exists in the KA-50, the other Russian helicopter. So if you're doing search and rescue, this is going to be one of your primary birds to do it with. And as you can see, that needle's jumped around a little bit, but it keeps settling back on this course. So we just got to keep an eye on it to see when it actually flips around and stays flipped around. And I put a unit only a couple of kilometers away, so we should be just about on top of it. How about that? And there goes the needle. All right, we have found our unit. So this has been just a real quick and dirty example of Doppler navigation, ARK-9, ARK-UD. I'm sure there's probably a few more tricks you can do. Like I said, there was a couple of different things you can do with the Doppler navigation as far as navigating directly to a target or going off to one side or just using it for distance calculations. So there's a number of tricks you can do with this stuff. But I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, just give me a buzz. Thank you very much.